Hey there everyone, uxwbill here once again. I think now is as good a time as any to make a video talking about some laptops. And obviously you do too if you're still watching, so let's get started. You're looking at two rather vintage laptops here. Now granted, the bottom one is only about 10 years old, but in computer years, 10 years is an eternity, so I think it qualifies with just a wee little bit of shoehorning into the vintage category. Now I happen to acquire these two computers in a very interesting way. As I've mentioned in the past, nearly all of the thrift stores in this area, including the big chains like Goodwill and Salvation Army, don't sell computers. And it's very disappointing to me. Most of the smaller mom-and-pop thrift stores don't either. In fact, the one thrift store that does almost never gets them, and the other thrift store slash recycler that I've sometimes talked into it doesn't want to sell me too many computers too often. Plus, I have to be careful because some of the upper-level management at that particular store is really not cool with the idea, although the store manager herself is completely awesome about it. So how did I happen to get these computers? Well, there's another thrift store that I frequent, a small one that's run by several churches in a nearby city, and ordinarily they have the usual household goods, computer keyboards and mice, the occasional flat panel display, and lots of clothing. I asked them one day if they ever happened to get any computers in, and they told me no. They don't get any computers because they don't want to have to deal with the liability, and I can kind of understand where they're coming from. But then the cashier surprised me when she said, "If you're interested in computers, though, we'll give you a call if we get any in, and you can have them." So I gave them my phone number and waited about 2 months, and sure enough, one day my phone rang, and it was the folks at this thrift store saying they had acquired 2 laptops and would I be interested. I told them I'd be there inside of 15 minutes, and it was a little bit of a stretch, but I was. And so what did I get? Well, the first computer is a Toshiba Satellite, and it is obviously the much more elderly machine of the bunch. No optical drive on this or anything like that. In fact, this predates the concept of a multimedia laptop by at least a little bit. It's probably the more interesting of the two machines, but I think I'll go ahead and start by talking about the less interesting of the two. This rather chunky looking Dell machine. Now it's got a really nice blue cover on it and an interesting looking Dell logo. You can see that there's some kind of a sticky substance on this particular part of the machine, and I think, if I'm remembering things correctly, that these particular machines were offered with some personalization features, some bling bling, if you will. I can't say that without laughing. I think you could get a little stick-on colorful piece of plastic, or maybe it was some kind of thin aluminum, who knows, but I think you could stick that on over this stock silver band on this machine's cover, thus giving it a little bit of personalization and some flair. So what is this thing? Well, it is an Inspiron 5100. And this is one of these very chunky laptops, as previously pointed out. Why is this a very chunky laptop? Well, part of it's just because of the fact that it's older. The other part is the fact that it's driven by an Intel Pentium 4 processor. Now, one thing I've been told in the past about certain people who camp in the wintertime when it's cold outside is that they'll take a rock and they'll put it near their campfire, and then they'll stick it in their sleeping bag, maybe even a couple of rocks, so that they can stay warm. I think you could probably do the same with something like this laptop. Because a Pentium 4 processor, despite Intel's best efforts and intentions, turned out to be quite a room heater. So let's go ahead, take a look at some of the ports and features on this machine. There's a card bus expansion slot over here, which is almost universally forgotten on laptops today, but there was a time when slots such as this were commonplace, even on home-grade machines such as this one. We have a connection for headphones and a microphone, also a nice touch, and then a CD rewritable compact disc burner, high speed no less, paired with a DVD-ROM drive. Now, unlike the business-grade machines that Dell would have sold at the time, this drive is permanently installed. You can't swap it with something else like a floppy drive, and I don't think that even though this machine is about 10 years old, that it had any provisions whatsoever for a floppy drive. So that's pretty much all there is on this side of it. On the front, We have stereo speakers, and it looks like they might even actually have some kind of a ported enclosure to give them some kind of a vague semblance of something called bass response. You have 3 status indicators on the front panel, a power on standby indicator, hard drive, and a battery charging indicator. There's also the latch that allows you to undo the display panel. And despite this machine's age, it appears that the hinges are in very good condition. There's no slop in them to speak of, and they hold the display quite steady. Excuse me. So go ahead and take a look on the other side of the machine here and see what's going on. This blank looking thing is actually a battery, and of course you can remove it. There's a little lever right here underneath this cooling fan that lets you remove the battery. And then there's a place to plug in a telephone modem. A telephone line to the telephone modem, and then there is a place where you can allow heat to get out of the machine, which is probably a very good idea. A lot of these Pentium 4 laptops had a very bad tendency to cook themselves to death. In fact, Dell had some very ill-fated members of the Inspiron line, the 1150 and the 1100 I think it was, and I'm not sure that any of those machines are left running to this day. Here's a place where a power adapter plugs in. You can see that it's the older style 3-pin connector. There's actually a television output on this machine, S-video, composite, all combined into one connector. Some sort of a ventilation port once again. I'm sure you're noticing a bit of a theme here. And 2 USB ports followed by a VGA connector. There's onboard wired Ethernet and a 4-pin FireWire or 1394 connector. Finding any kind of a FireWire connector on any kind of a laptop is actually quite nice. Now Apple is usually a lot nicer in that regard, in that theirs are the 6-pin powered connectors, but like I said, any FireWire port on any laptop is a result of the vendor being a lot nicer than they have to be, and they're certainly not the common feature that they used to be. So this machine is pretty much free of any legacy ports or anything like that. There's no serial or parallel ports on it. The business line and probably higher model home grade laptops from this time might still have had their legacy ports in place. I know the business line machines did. I don't know about the higher end home grade models. So let's go ahead and open this thing up. I'll show you the most amazing thing about it. This machine was shipped to its owner sometime in early 2004, I want to say. So we know that it's got to be at least 10 years old. But check this out. I have not plugged this machine into AC power since I bought it. In fact, this adapter was still bundled up in a rubber band until I took it down here and the rubber band snapped. So what you're about to see is, I think, nothing less than a miracle. Check that out. We'll go into System Setup here. Note the incredibly high BIOS revision number. Apparently it took Dell quite a while to get this particular machine right. I think there's like 35 revisions to the flash BIOS over time, and at one point they actually even changed the vendor from a fairly generic Phoenix-sourced BIOS to a customized Dell BIOS based on a really old version, I think 1.1 of the Phoenix BIOS software. But yeah, this thing is a couple revisions out of date at A27. I read online that the last released BIOS for this machine was not all that well received by some people because it changed the behavior of the fan. The way this thing is right now, the fan seems to run pretty much all the time. There's not really a lot of dust in the radiators. In fact, I did blow them out, so I guess that's probably why this machine is still alive. Amazingly, for a home grade machine, this thing's got dedicated graphics with dedicated video memory. That's a really nice touch. 1024 by 768 display resolution on the panel. And we can just page through some of the setup screens here, and if you're interested in seeing what any of these say in any great detail, you can simply pause the video and take a look at them. Here are some options concerning the power on self-test. It looks like wireless might have been offered as an option on this machine, built-in Wi-Fi, which is really not surprising for a 2004 era laptop, but I don't think the previous owner went for that, because installed in this machine's card bus expansion slot was this, which is actually a very nice little wireless card bus PC card from TrendNet. Obviously it's something of an older card based on the logo. At least I think that's an older logo. I don't know if TrendNet has changed their logo recently or not. But this thing is not only capable of 802.11 wireless G operation, it also supports the 5 gigahertz, I believe it's 5 gigahertz wireless A band as well. Some of the earliest Wi-Fi that was commonly available to end users. But enough of that. You can see that the wireless configuration says that there is no mini PCI wireless card installed. So we'll go forward another screen here. Check this out. This battery, I think this battery is original to the machine. It's a genuine Dell battery. And as you can see, it's holding its charge quite well. This has to be some kind of a miracle. I'm wondering if maybe I should, call the Pope or something. Because wow. It's just absolutely unbelievable. Unusual option for a laptop right here. You can configure this thing to automatically turn itself on at a particular hour of the day. Kind of a nice touch if you wanted to have your laptop plugged into AC power. I would assume that function only works when the laptop is plugged in. Otherwise, it's going to maximize the frequency of discovering you are unexpectedly out of battery power. Backlighting on this display still seems pretty good for being 10 years old. It doesn't look like this machine's had a whole lot of use. There's really no wear to speak of on the keyboard, no wear on the touchpad buttons, which are also that nice blue color, or even the touchpad itself, or the palm rest on this machine. It's really in great condition. Again, the thrift store would have given these machines to me, but I slipped them a $10 bill for both of them. I figured that would encourage them to repeat the effort once again to set aside computers when I came looking for them. So let's go ahead and exit System Setup here. See what this thing starts up into. Well, look at that, Windows XP. Not sure if it's Home or Professional Edition. I think the COA is for Home Edition, which makes sense given that this is a consumer-grade laptop. Speaking of Windows, this machine has a Windows key in a very interesting location. Instead of being at the bottom of the keyboard, it's actually situated up at the top in amongst the various function keys. Also notice that the tilde key is in a very interesting place as well. So let's see what's going on here. Looks like it's booting up. It's a 2.6 gigahertz Pentium 4. There's the onboard sound. I haven't really tested the sound quality yet. As far as I can tell, this is a fresh installation of Windows XP. There's no trace of anything the previous owner did on it, which is as it should be. All too many people do not take clearing the contents of their computer nearly seriously enough. And it's a wonder that things like identity theft are not much more of a problem than they are. But somebody definitely went to some trouble to put some nice software on this machine. We have OpenOffice 3, Mozilla Firefox. I don't think you can use the word nice. I don't think you can use the phrase nice software and Adobe in the same sentence unless there's a not between the two of them. So let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and go into my computer and check out some of the hardware details here. It's definitely running a factory installed version of Windows. There's the information, almost said inspiration, which a lot of people seem to call these Inspiron machines by mistake. A Dell Inspiron. I don't know exactly what that would be, but probably inspiring, whatever it is. Anyway, as you can see, the processor has at least some concept of speed step, which probably also helped keep it alive since it's only clocked at 1.3 gigahertz right now. Probably throttles up when it needs to do more. And let's see what we have in the way of graphics hardware here. ATI Mobility Radeon 7500C, same as System Setup said. 32 megabytes of video memory, so definitely more than enough capability to drive this panel very well, and probably for the time pretty decent 3D graphics as well. I don't know the Radeon 7500 chipset real well, but let's see, what release of software are we running here? I have to go in here and view the adapter's properties. This thing's response time isn't too bad. I'm probably going to go ahead and clear all the software off of it anyway and reload what I'd like to have on it here. But as you can see, this battery is holding up amazingly well. I would imagine that's the Dell supplied driver. I don't know if you can see that flickering that I can in the camera's viewfinder. Probably not after the deinterlacing and everything gets done with this video. Oh yeah, check that out. I don't know how true that is. But if that's even halfway correct, that's completely awesome. This thing's battery must be in just amazing shape. I know I sound like a stuck record, but I absolutely can't get over how crazy it is that this machine still has a battery that seems to be 100% functional. The only lithium-ion batteries I know of to have similar staying power are those of the Sony InfoLithium persuasion, such as the new old stock one sitting on the back of that camcorder over there. That battery is easily 14 or 15 years old now, and it too still works perfectly, still holds at least a 2-hour charge when you're using it with that camcorder, which again is just amazing. I'm going to make a video about that at some point. But right now, I'll go ahead and finish talking about this computer. I guess we'll go ahead and see if I can throw some kind of a CD in there. What have we got? I got some CDs here, got some floppies too. Let's see, what would be a good one? How about... in an effort to get caned by the maximum number of record labels possible in one day, how's about something from Journey? I haven't actually tried the optical drive on this machine. Look at that laser assembly. That's a lot more complicated than the ones you see in newer drives. I actually saw a Blu-ray drive in a laptop for the first time, and it had dual laser diodes in it, which is not surprising, with 2 lenses as well. So let's see if this thing will actually spin up and read a disc. We should probably turn up the volume. I don't think this thing's got any hardware volume control buttons. Oh, the volume's barely turned up at all. I'll probably get just what I'm asking for by turning that up that high. Probably get scared out of my pants. Oh, I have to validate Windows. I wonder if I can do that while I'm offline. Probably not. It probably won't let me do that. Well, it did. I assure you, I read that end-user license agreement carefully. I'm going to read all those options carefully, too. I'm going to read all those carefully. You get the idea that the theme is reading things carefully here, paying attention to dialog boxes, which in reality, in my former day job as an IT guy, was something that I wished more people would do. And I'm sure that any of you out there who work on computers can understand completely what I'm saying. Well, it's spun up. Let's pick something else to listen to from that CD. What have we got here? How about track 10? Okay, we better shut that off. We really don't want to get in trouble with the Music Mafia because they have no sense of humor whatsoever. I'm impressed though. That battery still just gets me. Okay, I said eject. Come on. There we go. But yeah, the audio quality is not too bad. A little bit on the tinny side, but definitely far, far better than many other laptops I've heard. So yeah, this thing seems to work just fine. Guess I'm going to go ahead and see if I can find some sort of interesting project to do with it, because, like I say, it's really clean and it works well. What more could you want? I really can't imagine. So that's pretty much everything there is to say about this one. Let's see if it'll go ahead and shut down like it's supposed to. Some piece of HP printer software. That joke practically writes itself. Then I'll get the other one up here, and we can take a look at it. Yep, there it went. Shut down. Alright, here's contestant number 2 on the uxwbill show. This is a Toshiba Satellite 105CS. I think fellow YouTube user vWestlife has a machine very similar to this. No multimedia capabilities whatsoever, but there is a curious little opening there on the bottom right-hand corner of the display panel that makes me wonder if maybe a version of this machine that didn't have some multimedia capability built in was offered, and that might not have been a spot to a microphone where a microphone could have been installed. Got a track point style pointing device. Toshiba and IBM were both really big on that back in the day. A set of concentric buttons here, the primary click button being larger than the secondary. And really a surprisingly nice keyboard. It's got nicely made keycaps that are actually pretty big. There's not much in the way of tactile response, but what do you want from a laptop? So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things on this machine. I guess we'll start with the front. This thing's kind of hard to pick up, really. There's a battery indicator on the front. Unfortunately, the battery for this machine is completely and totally dead. Here on the bottom is an information plate telling us that this is the 105CS/528 system unit, model number PA1217UV probably. Got a serial number, but here's the most amazing thing. In this modern world, when everything information technology related that we buy is made in China, check that out. This thing is made in the US of American and imported parts. That's pretty amazing considering that Toshiba themselves are a Japanese company. This machine predates the, well, no, it doesn't predate the lithium-ion battery because it claims that it might have one. I really thought that this thing's primary battery would be nickel-cadmium or nickel-metal hydride, as old as it is, but maybe not. Or maybe it was available with both types. Maybe you could buy an upgraded battery or something along those lines. Well, on this side, we have a battery release lever. I guess I'll have to figure out how to pop the battery out of this machine. I haven't done that yet. And then there is a floppy disk drive, as would be age appropriate on such a machine. A contrast control wheel for the display. And being that that's a contrast control, I would imagine that this machine has a passive matrix or color STN display. A lot of people don't really like color STN displays, but for those of us who were using laptop computers when a machine like this would have been brand new, the cost of an active matrix panel was simply obscene, and the defect rate was much higher than they are today. A lot of them were practically guaranteed to have a significant number of dead pixels, and sometimes in very noticeable places. A display had to be literally peppered with them back then to get a replacement under a manufacturer's display coverage. So really, if you wanted a color display on a laptop, the passive matrix or color STN display was the way to go. There's a connector for a VGA or Super VGA monitor. This machine does have its card of legacy ports. There's a printer port right there, a vent above it. I don't know if this machine actually has active ventilation. Being as it's an early Pentium laptop, it could go either way. There's a connector for a docking station here that's got protective flaps over it. And then there's a built-in power supply on this machine. As far as I know, Toshiba and Compaq were the only companies that ever really ran with the idea of building power supplies into their laptop computers so that you didn't need a power brick. Somebody asked me recently, I can't remember who, but it was somebody here on YouTube, asked me recently, why did that idea never really take off? And I don't know, but I think that a lot of it probably had to do with the fact that building the power supply into the laptop unavoidably made it thicker, and also I would imagine that the external power supplies that we have today are the better situation when it comes to repairability, because it would probably be very, very difficult, if not next to impossible, to find this machine's internal power supply on the second-hand market. And I'm practically certain that Toshiba has long since discarded any service parts or sold all of them off or liquidated them somehow that they might have had at one point in time for this machine. So these built-in power supplies are kind of a neat idea, but they remain a historical footnote of an idea in notebook computer design that just never really took off for some reason. There's a serial port right there for use with things like modems and serial mice. And then there is a combination keyboard and mouse port for PS2 port devices. You can actually get a splitter that would allow you to connect both of these at once. IBM typically included them with their ThinkPad machines of the time, and maybe Toshiba did as well, but this machine has been, out in the wild for years now, and it's probably been liberated from all of the accessories that it would have come with when new. However, unlike the Dell laptop, one thing that has not managed to slip away over the years are the little rubber feet. I can't believe that they're still present on this machine, but they are. There's a slot for a Kensington security lock to keep your laptop from walking off, another air vent, and very rarely seen on any laptop is a reset button. Yeah, if this thing locked up, or maybe if the power control logic becomes confused or something like that, I really don't know. But evidently, if you've got a paper clip or a ballpoint pen, you can reset this machine into working order. Moving on past that, we have 2 PC card slots. I can't imagine that this machine is new enough that these are card bus slots, but you can certainly see that expansion capabilities, hope this laptop doesn't fall over, were much more valued on older laptops than they are on new ones. And it's got these nice little blanks to keep the dust out. I guess since I happen to have a card bus card to hand here, I can just see if it fits. No, it does not. However, not every machine has a safety against inserting card bus only cards into a PCMCIA or PC card only machine, and as the operating voltages are different, you can fry something by doing that. So if you're not sure, don't. Fortunately, this machine appears to be protected against such stupidity. It's got a really nice design on the ejection levers too. Ejection levers on laptops that tend to poke out tend to get amputated. So Toshiba thought of that. You can pull these out a little bit and you can fold them in to a recessed area so that they're not as likely to be taken off. Well, let's go ahead and plug this machine into power. I actually did get the power cord with it, and the power plug symbol lights up. I don't know if this is the original cord or not, but it works, so I really don't care. And let's see here. Actually, there's something I wanted to show you on this machine, something unfortunate and sinister that looks to be gradually happening to it. If you look very carefully, just above the Toshiba logo and to the left, you can see that there's a crack coming in the screen assembly right around the hinges. Unfortunately, there's another one of the same over here, and while I would really hope that maybe this is indicative of some kind of a drop injury in the past, I really don't think so. I'm just not sold on the fact that that's not gradual stress getting ready to take its toll on those display hinges. So we'll want to be very careful with this machine. The power button is right here on the side next to the PC card slots. So go ahead and turn it on. I love the power indicator on this machine. It's a little computer with the word on in the middle. Looks like the display's a little bright. I better turn that contrast. Whoa, that was the wrong way to turn it. Okay. There we go. It's running Windows 95. I think this might actually be the factory preloaded operating system for this machine. Windows 3.1 and Windows for Workgroups 3.11 did survive into the Pentium era, but probably not as new as this machine is. I'd guess this is probably Pentium 75, Pentium 100, somewhere in there. Probably leaning more towards a 75 given the absolute lack of any multimedia capabilities whatsoever. Hey, check this out. Windows has updated your clock as a result of daylight savings time. Please verify that your new clock settings are correct. You suppose the time can actually be right on that? I don't know. I don't think so. It's not 9 o'clock in the morning by a long shot. It's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's certainly not April of 2007, so it definitely looks like this thing has drifted a little bit. Let's see, what is it? It's 2014, and I think that it is the 21st of April, and I'll set the time later. I can't be bothered to do that right now. I'm surprised that this thing's keeping time as well as it is, given that it's very nearly 20 years old by my guess. It wants me to set up the battery charge. I really don't understand what this window is for. If it's to try and tell the machine that it should take some kind of an action when the battery charge drops below a certain point, or just what exactly it's for. I suppose I could click the help button and maybe find out, but not right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of what's on the system here. Again, this looks like a pretty fresh installation of Windows. I think that whoever owned this machine previously had cleared all of their information off of it, though there are a couple of entries on the Documents menu. One of the things that kind of interests me here is the one that says Chassis Setup Mod. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like that file exists on this machine anymore. I think this feature has been dropped from later versions of Windows, where Windows would helpfully offer to connect a shortcut to something else when it couldn't find the original file. And as you can see, it's very helpfully decided that a fax subsystem DLL would be a good thing to connect that shortcut to, which obviously is not quite true. So let's see what kind of software we got on this thing. I have the standard card of Windows accessories, Paint, WordPad, direct cable connection, which was actually pretty handy back in the day. I used to have a parallel cable for use with that, so I could exchange documents between my compact Contura laptop of the time and my desktop computers of that particular time. We also have Microsoft Money, Microsoft Sports. I wonder if that's really stock software on this thing. I could see Toshiba having preloaded Microsoft Golf on this, though. Microsoft Works 4.0. If you ask me, that was the last really great release of Microsoft Works. Microsoft Works 4.5 before it basically turned into a scaled down version of Microsoft Office. Personal Companion Hangman Pro. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't want the Hangman being my personal companion. I'm not sure what that is. Toshiba Noteworthy Catalog. That might be worth looking at. There might be some interesting accessories in there. Something along those lines. Look at those trademarks and stuff. You can pause the video if you want to read the copyright information. Let's see what's in here. There's probably some really cool stuff in here from the time, along with equally ridiculous prices. Here's a fax modem. I remember these things, these X-Jack modems. So it used to be when you hooked up a PC card to a laptop, you had a little dongle that hung off the end, and it either got lost or it got amputated or something like that. And that was supposed to solve this problem. So let's see what they offer as far as memory goes. IC dynamic RAM cards. Wow. Are you needing more RAM to support your new Pentium processors? Well, of course I am. You can never have too much RAM. Again, if you want to read this, you can just pause the video. I'll stop on each of these for just a moment here. I'm actually running low on camera memory card space at this point, so I'm going to have to shut this off and empty some of the files off of this camera soon so I can keep recording. There's a hard drive. 260 million bytes. Nobody'd ever fill that up, right? I'll tell you what, folks, these were the days. Ooh, nice, a SCSI adapter. I actually had one of these for my laptop back in the day. I used it to drive a SCSI scanner well into the Windows 2000 days. Mine was from Adaptec. Also had one from a company by the name of Iger Labs, but it wasn't supported past Windows 98 and OS 2, which really didn't do a whole lot for me. Here's what looks like a power inverter, allowing you to run your computer and operate any AC-powered device from the car's electrical system. So what else have we got? We got carrying cases, software. That doesn't look like software to me. That's a 3270 emulation card to connect to an IBM mainframe computer. Wow, you remember when that was important? It might still be in some really big businesses. I don't know for sure. Input devices. A numeric keypad. A numeric keypad that attaches, of all places, seemingly to the parallel port. No, it's available for both. It says available for serial and parallel pass-through. Wow, this is really a fun walk through the past here. Check out some of these prices. They wanted $85 for that thing. That's crazy. And then general accessories. Here's the Kensington lock. $55, so they weren't exactly giving it away, but a lot cheaper than a laptop. Although the earliest revisions of these things, maybe the newer ones too, were susceptible to being unlocked by way of a toilet paper tube, if you can believe it. I think that's right. I remember seeing a video on that years ago. Okay, I'm back now. I went ahead and cleared a little bit of space off the camera's memory card. Hopefully I can get this wrapped up in 10 minutes, though I'm sure all of you know the way that I tend to just go on and on and on about everything. This technical reference button up here actually caught my eye, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. Looks to me like it just provides a more detailed description, or maybe the same description. I'll go ahead and move that window over here. This highlights one of the problem of color STN displays, dual scan displays such as this one. The response time really is rather poor, and you can see how the mouse cursor tends to kind of ghost and disappear. It used to be a very big problem back in the day. have your mouse cursor disappear. And of course, playing games on one of these things was absolutely ridiculous. Side-scroller games, anything that involved any kind of scrolling was just absolutely insane. The text is not quite the same between the two of these, so let's go ahead and pop out of that. I do see that the original master disk creator and stuff is still on this machine, so before too long I'm actually going to unbox some floppy diskettes, and I am going to be making the master diskette series for this machine. What's more, I will also be saving those disks to disk image files so that they can be immortalized in my collection of vintage software. Okay, I just got to see what this Hangman Pro thing is. Looks like it's actually a game. Okay, let's see if we can guess a letter here. Uh-oh, I got a head. This probably isn't going to be good. Okay, we got an E. How about an I? Oh no, this is going to end badly, I think. Maybe not. I got an O and an E. I wonder what it could be. I never was very good at these games, see? Okay, well, we're just going to give up. Do you want to give up? Oh, you didn't tell me the word! Well, I'm tempted to say an unmentionable word, but I'm not going to do that. That little stinker, it didn't tell me what the word was. So let's see what else we've got here. We have a couple of Toshiba utilities, Discovery Center, Function S, FNS, obviously to map the function key on the keyboard to do various interesting things, hardware setup, master disk creator, max time manager, user's guide, and warranty info. And you gotta love the fact that the warranty info icon is an umbrella. Let's go into hardware setup and just take a look around, see what it actually makes possible here. You can see the BIOS version, default settings. I wonder how big the hard drive is in this machine. I'd guess about, I think 500 megabytes would be a stretch, considering that there's, what, a 200 megabyte drive offered as an option. 8 megabytes of RAM. You remember when that was a lot of memory? I sure do. These days we've got machines pushing down 8 gigabytes of memory. So let's see how big the hard drive is on this thing. Go ahead and check that out. I was right, it's about a 500 megabyte drive. So that would have been pretty darn decent for the day. Really, about half of it's free, which isn't too surprising. I've talked about using disk compression in one of my previous videos to eke out a little more capacity from an insufficiently large hard drive, and I can remember doing that in the earliest days of Windows 95 running on my Dell Precision 433 SI personal computer, a computer from my past that I would really, really like to find another example of. And I can remember the day that I got an 850 megabyte hard drive, and I thought, you know, I'm never going to fill this thing up. It's funny how that works, isn't it? Go ahead and take a look at the FNS program here. I suppose they mean for you to say that finesse, but I'm not going to corrupt the language quite that badly. Looks like you get a keyboard here, and you can assign various functions to the keys. So you could customize this, which is actually a pretty nice touch. You can see that some of them are already customized. If you're watching this video in high definition, you can probably see the pixels in the display quite nicely. Very sharply focused there. No anti-aliasing on the fonts whatsoever. That didn't come along until, I want to say, the Plus package for Windows 95, somewhere along those lines. That's one thing I ought to look into. I ought to see what version of Windows 95 this machine is running, if it's running the original release or if it's running one of the OEM service packs. Well, there's our answer. I think it's safe to say that this is the original fresh installation of Windows 95. So all these years on, I really suspect that someone actually reloaded the operating system software on this machine. I can't imagine they kept it this fresh over all of these years, especially considering how much this machine would have cost when it was new. It doesn't give away much detail on what kind of Pentium processor's in this machine. We might have to go into system setup to find out that information. A little bit of a roster of hardware here. We'll see what kind of PCMCIA hardware this thing's packing. Just generic hardware, nothing fancy about it. Doesn't make mention of a PCI expansion bus, so I don't know if it's got one or not. It does have a plug-and-play BIOS, however. I'm getting a little off the point here. Custom mouse control panel. Toshiba AccuPoint. That clunking noise that you occasionally hear the hard drive making, that's actually a self-parking feature. See if it'll do it here. You know, these days hard drives are so nice and quiet. But back then it was really kind of nice. I liked that noise, at least. I didn't really care for the whiny spindle motors, especially as they got louder as time wore on. But the clicking sound was definitely handy because you could also tell when a hard drive was likely to be getting into trouble. I'm going to have to stop the camera here and figure out how to get into system setup on this machine and see if it'll tell me exactly what kind of a processor it happens to have in place. We'll see if this thing's advanced power management hardware is actually intelligent enough to shut it off. And it is. It's pretty cool. So I'll be right back. Okay, I happened to do a little bit of looking around online to see about how a person should go about getting into setup on this laptop. To my complete amazement, Toshiba still has the instructions explaining how to do so on their website. But before I get to that, I also discovered that fellow YouTube user BBishopPCM happens to have a video on this exact machine. I'm not sure I've watched that video of his, but I think I'll definitely go back and watch it when I get through shooting this video to see what his views on the machine were. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and get into system setup on this machine. This is certainly an interesting methodology. Toshiba apparently would have you create a keyboard error in order to provoke the machine into giving you a system setup prompt. Now, I have certainly used that approach in the past on machines where I could not otherwise figure out how to get into system setup, but this is the first time I have ever seen it as a manufacturer-prescribed method. So basically, you turn the power on, hold down the escape key, and the machine is supposed to complain and ask you to press F1. So let's see if it actually does that. Yep, check system, then press F1 key. Okay, I'm checking the system. I looked over it very carefully, same as I read the Windows Media Player thing very carefully. And this has to be one of the most austere system setup utilities I have ever seen. It's completely in black and white, which is pretty far out. Again, it doesn't really tell us much about the system's CPU, but from reading around online, I see that the stock processor was in fact a Pentium 75, so my guess was correct. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on here. It looks like this is one of those displays that probably only supports a 256 color video mode. But back then, you know, that was really something. It has an enhanced IDE hard drive in it. You can take a look at some of these things over here. And let's see, is there a second page to this, I wonder? I don't see any second pages to this, but I guess we'll go ahead and see. Nope, that is all that there is. So we'll go ahead and exit setup without saving. Again, if you want to look at those things, you can just pause the video. Exit without saving, and it'll go on to boot into Windows 95. Notice again the blurring on the text during the memory test. Okay, I went ahead and took a quick look at the display properties to go ahead and confirm my suspicions about this thing's panel color depth limitations. These limitations, of course, do not apply if you hook up an external monitor to this machine and use it exclusively. Though if you were, for example, to use the internal and external displays simultaneously, assuming this computer can actually do so, you would be limited not only to 256 colors, which, even though it claims to be indicating a 16-bit color palette, you can see very clearly from the example graphic down here that it's not really doing 16-bit color. You can also see that the desktop area is restricted to 640 by 480 while you are using the internal panel. This machine's graphics hardware comes from Chips and Technologies. Chips and Technologies was actually a company that manufactured highly integrated AT chipsets and later video hardware and things along those lines. I love the way it says Chips and Technologies Accelerator New. Certainly not very new these days. They were ultimately bought by Intel Corporation, and the display hardware business actually went to a company known as Accelient Technologies. Accelient Technologies was around, I think until a couple of years ago, and then they just kind of silently folded, and the last I knew their website said that Accelient.com is no longer available. So I'm guessing that the market for the classic Chips and Technologies video accelerators really wasn't that great. I was going to go ahead and just give you a little additional demonstration here of the fact that this panel is definitely, I take that back, I think it is running in as close an approximation as it can manage to high color mode. You can see that's not totally smooth, but it's also not dithered quite as clearly as it would be if it were really running in 8 bits per pixel or 256 colors. Okay, now I'm curious. I'm just going to have to reboot the machine and try it. Who knew that this would be such a tremendous trip down old laptop memory lane for me? I really am a sucker for this old computer stuff. I love playing around with it. I love puttering with it, and I really haven't had a great deal of exposure to playing with old computers in a period of time that has been way, way, way too long. Kind of like this video. It's been way, way, way too long. So let's see here. It's going to come back up into Windows. You know, now that I think of it, I think that color depth example graphic in Windows 95 is actually not capable of indicating proper high color depth selections when you've chosen them. I got to go ahead and try this again here. Switched it back to 256 color mode. We'll go in here and we'll get the color palette to come up once again. Yeah, the dithering is a great deal more pronounced now. So apparently, even though this display panel doesn't really properly support high color display, it will try to do it, which is more than I can say for the first color display laptop I ever owned, a Compaq Contura 410C with Western Digital graphics. Yes, I kid you not, there was a time when Western Digital, and yes, I mean the hard drive manufacturer, was in the graphics business. Here's the Chips and Technologies display control utility. It says it's set to an interlaced refresh right now, which is very interesting. I'm surprised it's not set to 60 Hertz. The higher scan rates would be for use with what were considered ergonomically correct monitors at the time, although many of us who had graduated from the old monochrome and CGA displays of the time considered an ergonomic monitor to be one that didn't output so much electromagnetic radiation that it left a silhouette of our head on the wall behind us. Oh my goodness. Well, everybody, I have had a heck of a good time talking about this old laptop and sharing it with you. I sincerely hope that you have enjoyed this video as well as my protracted rambling. Until next time, everybody, this is uxwbill saying goodbye for now, and feel free to leave a comment if you have one.